Hello there, Qckslvrslash here, and today we have a video courtesy of Kelorn driving the Tier 8 premium German battleship, the Tirpitz. And this ship is always a beast, and even more so when you're top tier, and this is a pretty sweet matchup for Kelorn. Only a few 8s on each team, a couple 7s, and then a large number of Tier 6 ships. There's not a lot of destroyers in play. There's a healthy number of cruisers and a few battleships to give you some hit point pools to really do damage to. Everyone knows I love the Tirpitz, and looking at it, I can't decide if this is the alternate camo or not that was unlockable for completing a set of missions, like Tarn and Stitch or something like that. I know I've got it, I don't think I've ever used it, so I can't think to say if this is actually it. But either way, Kelorn is doing what I would pretty much do on this map, and that is head over in the Charlie direction. Now, I think the last game I commentated on Line of Fire, I kind of mentioned that it seems more and more this is where people go. There was that long time where ships often went over to A, but as B was restructured and some of these islands were out in the middle, for one reason or another, people just don't really sail over to that side of the map, and you can see it. Even the people on Kelorn's team spawning over there are pretty much leaving. The team's collapsing on Bravo and Charlie, and that's where they're going to make their fight. And it makes sense in a way, because from Charlie you can hit Bravo, from Bravo you can hit Charlie, but this big island here kind of blocks Alpha off, and any ships that are over there can't do too much at Bravo. And I think that's part of why you've seen this kind of shift. I also feel more and more battleship players are realizing that islands can be their friends too. So often battleships want to be in the open water, but all open water means is you're more likely to sail in a straight line, and it becomes harder to predict where torpedoes may be coming from. In Kelorn's situation here, he knows they're going to be coming up, you know, this narrow channel. They can't come from anywhere there's land. So you're able to position yourself in such a way that you're not accidentally just sailing straight into a barrage. Unfortunately, it looks like most of the enemy team is kind of hanging out south of B and over at A. And speaking of torpedoes, there they are, and because of that island, the enemy Qckslvrslash was forced to lead them probably a little longer than he wanted to, and Kelorn has no trouble dodging. He's being patient here, waiting for the Qckslvrslash to steady up on a course before firing those big battleship guns his way, and unfortunately doesn't pay off. None of the shells hit, and that Qckslvrslash's trying to slip away, but taking quite the beating. Can Kelorn's team finish him off? If you're in a Bismarck right now, you know those secondaries would be pummeling that poor little destroyer. And yeah, if I had to say, I'd say this Qckslvrslash is screwed. And Kelorn's second volley does not miss. You can see once again more torpedoes in the water. I'm not sure who those are at. They're definitely not really in Kelorn's direction. But more importantly, they've got the side of the map. You know, I always talk about map control, taking a flank, and they've got it. And that means all the enemies are in the same direction. So, despite taking a big hit there, Kelorn can turn in and start to put pressure on the enemy fleet. And his whole team can turn in. None of them are going to get caught trying to like wander off and chase someone down to the side of the map. So it's going to keep them more tightly together, and that's going to allow them to focus fire more effectively and hopefully eliminate some enemy ships in a hurry. And well, with a couple side-on cruisers, Kelorn certainly has his pick of targets here. Fires off a volley at the Cleveland. They're looking pretty decent. No citadels, but nearly 10,000 damage, which to a Cleveland is pretty much a third of his health. The Edinburgh is still there, and unfortunately just disappears. Though he did fire, so maybe he'll be respotted and Kelorn can get a quick shot off before he disappears behind this island. You see that land indicator pop up and front two turrets fires straight into an island and show it's who's boss. But the shells that did get past 25,000 damage, 2 citadels there. And I don't know what it is with cruisers just sailing side on. Like, the Edinburgh knew ships were over here. Why would he not at least maneuver a bit? But he sailed in a perfectly straight line for the entire time there and paid for it. Now, unfortunately for Kelorn's team, they've lost 2 ships to 1 on the enemy, and the enemy's getting Bravo and really has had cap control this whole time. So they're down a little bit, 75 points, not a big deal. Once again, side on Cleveland. Kelorn takes the shot. Hopefully this does a little more damage than the first volley. Shells are definitely further back. There's the Citadel and the kill. And that pretty much brings things perfectly even. The points are until the enemies get the 1 tick, but the ships they've lost are also pretty even. But this is where you need to start thinking, okay, well, how's the rest of the team doing? When you look around, most ships are on full health or close to it. This New Mexico and New York, though, are very close to being dead. Fortunately, the enemy Colorado isn't too far off himself, so I'd say things are even. That's just one of those things you really got to pay attention to as you're playing. So often you'll see a team get ahead on a ship count and think, oh, we got this, and get a little careless when really they're behind on an overall team health level. And you'll actually notice when Wargaming holds events and in tanks and stuff, the commentators, one of the things they can see is the total team health. And it's because that really does factor into it. Sometimes losing the set of guns sucks, but as long as you're getting lots of damage onto the enemies and you're not letting them cycle out who's taking that damage, you will start to work targets down. Speaking of that, Kelorn's division mate, Pilgrimos, trying to work that Nevi down, because that would be very good to get rid of. He manages to hit him aside on New Orleans, and those shells are also looking quite good, though. 1 overpen for 5,000 damage. And Kelorn's in a good situation here. That North Carolina is looking pretty alone. He's got his buddy in the Edinburgh, unfortunately dropped his smoke and sailed out of it. But this North Carolina is going to be the focus of more than 1 set of guns. And he's sailing a little too flat on. Doesn't take a ton of damage there, only about 7,000. But when you compare the German to American ships, the Germans, you can get away with a little more. You can be a little more side on just because the armor design, where the Citadel sits, isn't as exposed. It's not to say it's invincible, but you do get away with a lot more. Unfortunately, so far Kelorn hasn't managed to exchange very evenly, but the torpedoes are going to be the great balancer here. You can see him coming over, lining the shot up, kind of taking his time, looking at what that North Carolina is doing, and this is where you get into the mind game. You kind of turn, looks like maybe he fired them, but Kelorn's not taking enough damage to have to desperately fire these away. So he's waiting. He's getting closer to the kind of range where you can't miss. And that's a good move. Another 7,000 damage, and look at those torpedoes. They're all going to hit. Good night, North Carolina. And hello, New Orleans. Gets Torps off his other side, is coming about. The repair party's about to come off cooldown. And he's ready for a fight. And it's gonna be a fight. You'll see him looking away there, and that's to get the guns over onto the side he wants them to be on. So that when he completes this turn, he's ready to engage the enemy, not stuck waiting for those rear turrets to come around. paused for a few seconds there on shots on the New Orleans. I think if he had just snapped off right away, he probably would have got his side, but there's plenty to shoot at. He's popping in and out a little quick there, so I'm just going to go to third-person view. You know, I get why he's doing it. When you're in a tight situation like that, you're continuously having to, you know, look around, keep track of targets. The secondaries are firing at the gate, shooting more primary shots at that New Orleans, working him down to about 1 hit range. And he's in a tight situation here. The last thing you want to do is eat some torpedoes. The New Orleans, he'll get through that damage. Well, hopefully. And, the New Orleans just manages to squeak away. You can see Kelorn's got his rudder over, trying to get those front turrets to fire. He manages it, and, well, it's time to go down with honor. A full health New Mexico pretty much turned straight into him. His secondaries pick up a kill. He gets the ram, double strike close quarters, and Kraken. Pretty awesome way to finish a match off. And the match kind of is just that. It's getting close to being done. The friendly Colorado and Fubuki are dangerously low on health, and if anything hits that Colorado, it's pretty much dead. But this enemy Colorado, the Edinburgh, and wherever that last cruiser is, they don't have much to be able to come back from. You can see the one guy getting finished off, but, you know, Kelorn's team is still ahead. They've got points and the ship lead. Colorado on Colorado. Kelorn's has more health, so this is kind of just a standard battleship showdown. And furthermore, he's got help of a Bayern. So this enemy is kind of stuck. You can see him turning there to get all the turrets around, and looks like he's gonna ground himself. Definitely a mistake on his part, because now he is just a sitting duck. And gets killed, and that leaves just the Edinburgh and whatever cruiser happens to be in the north. And the big advantage they hold right now is this Fubuki. He may not have a lot of health, but because of the spotting advantage, he's going to be able to find these enemy cruisers for his teammates, get them lit, and make sure those battleships can finish them off. You can see the shells coming in. The Colorado's firing AP and finishes them off. That Bayern is slinging HE. Looks like he's going for the fires, and I'm hoping he didn't do that the whole game, because too often I see battleships just sail about using HE only. I know about 4 videos back there's the Qckslvrslash, and I'm like, why is he doing this? And you know, since then I've kind of found out, okay, you know, the Qckslvrslash AP just really underperforms, so in that case maybe HE makes sense. But in general, this tier, AP's your friend, and all that's left on the enemy team is a Hipper versus a New Orleans, Colorado, Bayern, and this Fubuki, who is finishing up the cap job. They're going to have all 3 caps, which means they're going to walk away with this one pretty quickly. You can see the Colorado firing. Isn't landing any huge hits. The Bayern's not doing any better with that HE. But this enemy Hipper is kind of walking into a trap. This New Orleans has positioned himself really well to ambush him. And what's going to happen here, and I'm guessing the Hipper doesn't know he's there, is as the Hipper clears this edge of land, he's going to be broadside on to that American cruiser. You can see the Hipper's guns are facing the wrong way. They're looking at the Fubuki, who just popped his smoke. He's going dark, and he's going to be forced to take those shots from this New Orleans, who is firing HE. Oh, why, buddy? Siddharthas, AP, you have a side-on cruiser like 6 kilometers away, and he's firing HE. That is painful to watch. If those were AP shells, that would have been a couple citadels, and the game, well, the Fubuki's doing his best, gets a torpedo in, Colorado finishes him off. And Kelorn's game may have ended a bit early, but it wasn't without fanfare. 875,000 credits, 10,000 experience, close quarters expert, Kraken Unleashed, devastating strike, high caliber, double strike, 192,650 damage. And, 3 torpedoes, 5 kills, couple citadels, secondaries did some work. And he almost single-handedly wiped out the northern force on the enemy team there. And a big part of it, and a big chunk of this damage, was that enemy New Mexico who, I don't know what he was thinking, turned in. Maybe he thought it was a good exchange, a 6 for an 8. But the reality is Kelorn was dead, and he was on full health. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a great game for Kelorn. And top of the team, great finish. And you can see, unfortunately, his buddy there in division, kind of right down to there at the bottom. But he's still got 1,000 XP, which is a decent enough game. That's kind of the funny thing sometimes when you look at your winning team. If a lot of people manage to do some work, and especially when you're a high-tier ship, you might come up looking a little low on the team standing, but still have had a good game. But, the one person I do question is that New Orleans at the end of the match. He gave up his chance for a huge chunk of damage, and, well, Kelorn certainly didn't make the same mistake. Look at how much damage he did to so many different ships. 50,000, 48,000, 27, another 27. And then a couple destroyers that he managed to just finish off. I really enjoyed watching this one. Kelorn had kind of said, I go out with glory, and he definitely did. 3 ships in the matter of seconds. And I think that made the difference in this game. Thank you very much for sending it in. I loved watching it. I hope you guys did too. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up or subscribing to the channel. And if you're watching this live, I'm on Twitch right now. So come join me over there, twitch.tv/Qckslvrslash, and you can watch me try to replicate this success. Anyways, as always, I'll have another one for you guys later.